You found the skeleton. How would you tell people that? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey there, YouTube, and welcome back to the next part of this series in which Robert Carter disproves evolution by getting the science wrong, which is ironic since he actually has a biology degree. Once again, I'm addressing him directly since I know he's seen at least some of my stuff, and since he doxed someone else while trying to dox me, plus, when he admitted I was right about something, he then couldn't be bothered to say my name. Anyway, you're on, Bobby. Oh no!
And the number of flu generations here is approximately the number of generations that evolutionists claim separate humans from chimpanzees. Oh.
You mean that after many generations, neither chimps nor humans are likely to have gone extinct? What a blow to evolution! But let's take a look at that. Both organisms have a similar generation time, but 20 years is on the low end for both. So let's just go with that, as again, that's generous to you, Dr. Carter. I'll also assume a long ago divergence of 13 million years. So that's 650,000 generations. That's how many generations fruit flies would go through in about 18,000 years. So they would experience 4 times as much genetic entropy in the scenario as they have in the scenario in which they survived the flood, which again is 0. So 4 times 0, carry the 0, 0.0, yep, all that math and I came up with nothing. There's no reason to think anything bad would happen.
If we really were millions of years old, we would be extinct.
Got a citation for that both supports the claim and isn't full of obvious errors? No? Well then, I get to ignore this claim.
I'm going to show you another illustration. This is one of those big idea things. I was at a conference. There was a documentary that PBS put together, and they had shown it in public school classrooms all over the country that year. And in that documentary, they outwardly mocked Christianity.
Did they mock Christianity, or did they mock your specific brand of anti-science Christianity? Somehow, I feel like the average science-accepting mainline Protestant, Catholic, or Eastern Orthodox Christian felt quite unmocked. But then, I haven't seen it.
But the Supreme Court has laid down the law. They said all instruction must be religiously neutral.
Hey, that might change now, so who knows, maybe we'll get officially civic monotheistic schools back.
So this documentary actually broke the law. And right now there's a lawsuit going through the court systems. Probably won't go anywhere, but it's going through the court systems right now because they shouldn't have done it.
Maybe it did. I don't know. I haven't seen it, and I don't really care.
But while I was watching this documentary, I realized that every single thing the evolutionist was using to support evolutionary theory, I agreed with.
Yeah, well, young Earth creationists have been so backed into a corner that basically all you're left with is, well, evolution happened, but not that much, man.
Did you catch that? Do you see the deceit?
Not from the documentary, but then again, I still haven't seen it, nor am I sure why it's important.
By saying something that's true, something else is true, that something else is true, something else is true. Since all of it does agree with evolutionary theory, therefore evolutionary theory must be correct.
Damn it, Bobby. That's just how arguments work.
Watch. Here is the world of creation. Here is the world of evolution. This is what Charles Darwin did and evolution since then. They get a list of facts that fits their theory. Fits my theory, fits my theory, fits my theory. All these facts must disprove your theory. That's what they say.
No, they utterly ignore you for the most part, because you don't matter. You produce no new inventions that depend on the ideas of your work. You make no useful predictions that provide avenues for new research. Instead, you just cosplay at science inside of one of a few echo chambers, and when real scientists actually even notice you, it's with bemused surprise that you even still exist. No one is defining their science in opposition to you. Some people, like me, like to debunk you because you lied to my face for decades. And a few other people who are actual scientists do it as a fun hobby. But let's be real here. You matter as much to evolutionary biologists as flat earthers matter to NASA. On the whole, they don't care about you, they don't think about you, and they find it absurd that you even exist.
But this is reality.
It is though, because for young Earth creationism to be true, most of biology, all of particle physics, most of thermodynamics, virtually all of astronomy, all of geology, most of chemistry, and most of meteorology would have to be wrong.
Natural selection is explainable in both theories.
I feel like while there is some overlap that's appropriate in that Venn diagram, it's a pretty small amount.
And almost all the evidence that an evolutionist will use is actually explained on both sides.
No, it can be accommodated by creationism. But even today, there are creationists who reject it. See my earlier series about Randy Galuza of the Institute of Creation Research. It's a prediction of evolution. A confirmed one at that.
I call this non-discriminating information. It's information you can't use to decide between two theories.
Yeah, there's a difference between desperate post hoc ideas to accommodate data you've never predicted and even previously said would not be found, and making confirmed predictions which then go on to be the basis of further research. Creationism is doing the former, evolution the latter. That's why this is not a serious scientific endeavor. Cool. Now let's get out of the realm of unlabeled Venn diagrams and into the world of actually talking about science.
You know, Charles Darwin wrote an entire book, The Origin of Species, and in that book he never defined what a species is.
He didn't have to. He relied on species concepts that came before him. You don't have to define everything in every book. You can rely on the previous work of others. But let's go and talk about species concepts and why, since all of them run into problems, for some reason that's a problem for evolution per se, and not just a problem for taxonomy.
But I can't define the word species.
Then you're not trying. There are numerous species concepts like the biological species concept, the ecological species concept, the phylogenetic species concept, and the morphospecies concept. Just describe a bunch of them and then note that when an organism would be a species on the basis of as many as can be applied to that group, then they can be reasonably termed a species, with the caveat that species are just a human concept and a conventional way to organize life forms to make them easier to talk about. It's really not impossible to do.
Nobody can. It's a Latin word, it means type.
That's mighty fine etymology there.
Well, okay, fine. But what's a species? You've heard of a zorse or a zonkey?
Yes, they're hybrids of either E. caballus and E. africanus, or with any of the members of subgenus Hippotigris. They're usually sterile, but some females of specific crossings may rarely produce foals.
You ever hear of a liger?
Yes, it's a cross between a male Panthera leo and a female P. tigris, in which males are sterile, but females are not.
You know, female ligers can have cubs with tigers or lions. You know that, right?
Yup.
They're not like mules.
Well, they're a little like mules in that they can't breed true, and there have been a handful of verified reports of mule mares giving birth to viable foals.
What's a species? I have no idea.
It's a group of organisms that fits one or more of the species concepts. So let's look at them in terms of P. leo and P. tigris. First up, the biological species concept says that if organisms can mate and produce fertile offspring, they're the same species. This is basically half the case, as interfertility between the species is limited to females. So by this definition, it's iffy, but I'd say they don't meet it. Well, the ecological species concept says that organisms can be in the same species if they breed and are adapted to a particular set of specific resources, a niche, and an environment. While tigers are adapted primarily to solitary ambush hunting and swimming in jungles, lions are adapted for group ambush and pursuit hunting in dry grasslands, and their prey is different, so by this definition they are different species. Okay, on to the phylogenetic species concept. Well, that says that a species is an irreducible group of members who are descended from a common ancestor and who all possess a combination of certain defining or derived traits. I'd argue that lions and tigers separately very much meet this definition, so they're different species. Well, last but not least, let's look at the morphospecies concept. That says that a species are a group of individuals that are morphologically similar to one another and are morphologically distinct from other groups. I think just about everyone would be able to group lions together as morphologically similar to all other lions, and do the same with tigers, and then note that the groups are distinct from one another, so they are separate morphospecies. Since tigers and lions are definitely different ecospecies, phylospecies, and morphospecies, but their existence as a distinct biological species is a bit iffy, I think the only reasonable conclusion is that they are distinct species, despite the existence of captive fertile hybrids. And guess what? That's the consensus of like all phyllid taxonomists too. Cool how that works.
My definition of species is if two things can interbreed, I call them the same species.
Have you ever just Googled species concepts? I mean, that would be a good start. Maybe do that, Dr. Marine Biologist. Glad you picked the one that you learned in 6th grade and then never bothered to progress further in your understanding of biology, despite somehow earning a PhD in a biological field. I wonder how you managed that.
Red wolves, gray wolves, all domestic dogs, the Australian dingo, the African jackal can all interbreed freely. That's all one species.
Cool. Do they collectively meet all the other definitions? No, they don't. Maybe that's why the golden jackal, as well as the American coyote, which you left out, that is Canis aureus and C. latrans, are considered separate species from C. lupus, the gray wolf, which contains the domesticated subspecies C. lupus familiaris.
Yet I have no problem calling the gray wolf and the red wolf different species because they look a little different, they act a little different, they live in different places. Okay, fine.
Odd, because that's the one canid you've mentioned whose status as a species or subspecies is actually contentious. Whether it's a species, a subspecies of C. lupus, or a hybrid C. lupus C. latrans population is still debated, and for that reason it is sometimes left off of endangered species lists.
But just because we call it a species doesn't mean actually they're genetically distinct.
Well, different members of phylospecies are, but that's the thing with C. rufus, the red wolf. It's not clear that it meets the phylospecies or ecospecies definitions. We know it doesn't meet the biological species definition. So other than being morphologically distinct, it's not clear that it is a separate species.
Boy, that's a huge problem. Because all of a sudden, if we can't define what a species is, how do we talk about the evolution of species?
Because no matter how ill-defined species are, clades exist, that is, groups of individuals who share a particular most recent common ancestor. So C. lupus and C. latrans still share a common ancestor more recently than the one they share with C. aureus, which shares a common ancestor with those two more recently than it does with Cuon alpinus, the dole, which coincidentally means I can't abbreviate the genera to just C anymore. Lame. So, because we can figure out where clades are, we can trace those through time. That's what evolution is about. Biology doesn't really care what we name groups of organisms. Those aren't real parts of the organisms in question. But clades are. They represent historic realities about the past ancestry of organisms. And the question between anti-evolution creationists and science is how far back can these things be traced? Anti-evolution puts arbitrary stopping points at levels chosen to make creationists happy. Science just sees where the data lead, and it turns out that they lead to universal common ancestry.
Wow, okay, there was actually an article that appeared in our Journal of Creation, it just appeared on our website not too long ago. It's about the cat kind.
Are you referencing Cats, Big and Small by David Catchpole, published June 19th, 2017 on Creation.com, or The Family of Cats, Delineation of the Feline Basic Type by Barnabas Pendragon and Nico Winkler from March 24th, 2017? Let's see if I can figure it out.
And then I should have had this. This would have been perfect right here. They've got this chart of all these different species of cat, from the lion and tiger all the way down to the house cat. They had pumas on there, they had lynxes on there, they had the serval and all those cool like mini cats that look kind of like Bengal tigers, but they're like a double-sized house cat. All those kind of species of cats. And they had all these lines connecting which ones are known to interbreed.
Cool, that's no help then. They both have that chart.
Now, there's not a direct link between lions and your kitty cat because, well, one of them always gets eaten, but there's an indirect route. The big cats can interbreed with the little cats, and the little cats, the medium-sized cats, and medium-sized cats can interbreed with the little cats. There is a continuum from your tiger to your tabby.
If the chart in those articles is to be trusted, yes.
There really is only one cat species.
That is not the conclusion to draw here. Have I spent this whole time talking about species concepts other than the biological species concept for no reason? Those animals don't fit any of the species concept besides the biological one, and even then, except within a genus, it's iffy.
The Bible describes created kinds, that God created different things to reproduce after their kinds. Well, the Bible uses reproduction as a criterion for what's in a kind and what's not.
Does it though? Because it says that organisms will bring forth after their kind, but that doesn't mean that what they bring forth has to remain interfertile. In fact, we have cases where CMI thinks that we have a kind, but we have no evidence of hybrids. Where are the hybrids between Canis, Lycaon, and Vulpes among the canid kind? Oh, there aren't any? So fun that if animals can breed, they're in the same kind, but if they can't, then maybe they're still in the same kind. Makes the definition useless. By that definition, humans are certainly in a kind with each other, but they could just as well be in a kind with elephants, pine trees, and mushrooms.
So do biologists. If two things can interbreed, they're the same species, they're the same kind.
Except, that's wrong on both fronts. Species are not defined solely by the biological species concept, and biology has no time for the word kind, because a useful definition has never been developed to determine when things are in different kinds, or where the boundaries of kinds are. Nor are there any useful, testable predictions that have been made and confirmed on the basis of the idea of created kinds. Sure, there have been retrodictions, but since they all boil down to basically, some organisms can breed with each other, that's not exactly revolutionary. Since it's been known since before civilization that yes, some organisms can breed with each other.
Dogs and cats cannot interbreed, but all dogs can interbreed and all cats can interbreed.
Not if by dog you mean canine, because there have been no confirmed fox hybrids with members of genus Canis, nor any crosses with either and the dole, nor any of those and the African painted dog. Sorry, but unless you've got a new animal to show that's a cross between previously not known to hybridize canines, you're just wrong about this. And I must ask again, Dr. Carter, did you know you were wrong, or are you just incompetent about this too? Now, I know you could perhaps fall back on saying that by dog you only mean members of genus Canis. Let's not forget that in your journal, Gene K. Leitner in 2010 said that all extant canines are descended from two individuals on Noah's Ark, and in 2019 on Creation.com, your website, Cody J. Guittard said that there was a canid kind, so apparently it's not just canines, because the group also includes the extinct borophagine or bone-crushing dogs that are all in the same kind. I look forward to your new evidence of family-wide hybridization in Canada.
Let's start off with a statement, a fun statement. The field of genetics has been at war with Darwinism since genetics was invented.
Weird, because the whole field of phylogenetics is basically just the marriage of evolutionary biology and genetics. Kind of hard to be at war while working happily at the same project without a hint of conflict. And also, there's a field of paleogenomics, which not only uses sequences from ancient fossils that are still young enough for sequences to be made, but also uses forensic techniques to recover the likely state of the genomes of evolutionary ancestors of modern groups. Is this sort of like how peanut butter and jelly are at war, or how Batman and Robin are at war? Seems like it.
Gregor Mendel came up with the laws of genetics just a few years after Charles Darwin published The Origin of Species. I just read an essay a couple months ago. This person realized that when you read Mendel's works, point for point for point, he's paralleling The Origin of Species.
That would be odd, since there's no reason to think either man read the other's work, in part because of a language barrier, and in part because, tragically, no one in the late 1800s seemed to care about the work of Gregor Mendel.
And discrediting The Origin of Species.
Who cares? The book is more than 16 decades old. How does modern genetics discredit modern evolutionary biology? Despite, being part of it.
Charles Darwin needed, remember that small variation Darwin talked about? He needed everything from really tall to really small and everything in between. Mendel said, no, genes say tall or short.
No, he didn't say that traits had to be discrete. You could have a tall, not so tall, a short, and a not so short group of alleles, according to him, and even more gradations. That genetics involves discrete units doesn't tell you anything about how different the outcomes or traits are going to be. Plus, some traits, like sickle cell, are codominant, and rather than being one or the other, can combine. Which, is the thing you made a big deal about earlier.
Not everything in between. And they didn't know what to do with him.
Who are they? The people who ignored him because no one thought the work of some monk playing with plants was very significant? Or the people who later rediscovered his work and then created the field of genetics, which was easily integrated into the Neo-Darwinian synthesis in the 1940s? Well, I doubt I'm going to get an answer, and I think we've been going long enough. Join me next time for the final episode. If you like this video, make sure you hit like, and leave a comment telling me what you liked about it, or just expressing whatever you want. If you didn't like it, hit the dislike button and leave a comment telling me what you hated about it. Either way, I do hope that you subscribe to this channel. Make sure you ring the bell icon and turn on all notifications so you're always notified when I have new content. I'm the Dapper Dinosaur. Thanks for watching, but before you go, I just want to say a special thank you to my channel members and my patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Work in Progress, Benthoven, Cynically Skeptic, Denny5252, Ian Chen, John Ackerman, Landon Knoll, Mabdy Babdy, McSpooks, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, and Patrick Dennis. As you probably know, YouTube is a very volatile platform, and from month to month my income on the channel can swing wildly. But the people you see on screen are directly supporting so that I don't have to worry too much about that, and the channel can keep going as it is, and perhaps even improving. If you'd like to join this team, there are links below to join the channel or in the description to join the Patreon. The Patreon starts as low as $1 a month, and the channel memberships start as low as $1.99 a month. On Patreon, you can even get a discount for pledging annually. If you do decide to pledge, you'll get access to an exclusive Discord server just for channel supporters, as well as early access to all of my pre-recorded videos, often up to 2 months in advance. Higher tiers will unlock even better perks. Now, if an annual or monthly pledge isn't right for you, but you still want to support the channel, there is a merch store down in the description, as well as an Amazon wishlist, just for me. And if financial support isn't something you can or want to do, then if you still want to help out the channel, please just like and share these videos and make sure you comment on them. It really helps the channel out. Thanks again for watching.